when clients first start with us, something I say to them sometimes is you want to think about eating like a dog. And I said for one reason. So you think about eating the same thing at measured amounts, same time every day, because then you have consistency. And then it's very easy from a coaching aspect for me to be like, okay, you're not making progress, let's change this and this.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 strength and health authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode.
Hello there. Welcome to yet another episode here on the Strong by Design podcast show. Your host today, Coach Chris Wilson, and joining us today from Toronto is our guest who's in the same time zone, which is nice because he's a bit of a world traveler, so I'm a little bit jealous. I'm a father of 2 younger kids who coaches a lot of Little League baseball, and I don't typically get to do much traveling, especially in the spring. But we'll find out a little bit more about our guest and all of his amazing experiences all over the world in just a moment. What I'd like to do, though, is if you're a new listener to the podcast, welcome. Always great to have even just one new listener matters to us. And our show, as I've been saying in the last several weeks, has seen a really nice growth spurt. Kind of like when a little boy hits 11 and all of a sudden he's growing in his sleep, wakes up and his shoes don't fit. It's kind of how I feel with the podcast right now. Since January, we have seen a mega increase in downloads and listenership. And so it's been really promising and exciting, honestly, when I look at the numbers, and everything's blowing me away. So that's always a good sign that we're doing something right here on Strong by Design. So if you're new, welcome. If you're a past listener, then we're so happy to have you back. Every week is something that's going to benefit you in mind and body or in spirit, which is the whole point of Strong by Design. You are created strong by design, and you have the chance and the choice every single day to live your life strong by design. Okay, so the double meaning there. And so be sure when you get to the end of this episode to hit share. Share it with a friend or a family member who could benefit from all of the amazing information that you're going to hear today from our very special guest. And be sure to hit 5 stars and leave us a review if you would, because that would be wonderful. We'd love to know what you liked about the episode or what you love about our show, because that really matters to us. And you know what? I'm going to have to start reading some of these reviews because I think people love to have their reviews read in podcasts. So maybe I'll start doing that. So our guest today, Mr. Charlie Johnson, coming to us from Toronto. Charlie has Charlie Johnson Fitness. He's an online transformation coach. He's in incredible shape. If you just go on his website and watch some of his video content or see pictures, you're going to be like, man, I wish I looked like that guy. And so happy to have this gentleman on the show today. And I know all of the information that you're going to, get your notepads out, because there are going to be some great takeaways and nuggets that you can start to incorporate in your life instantly, right away, and start to get results very quickly with what you're going to hear today. So Charlie, thank you so much for being on the call.
Yeah,
great to have you.
Thank you very much for a very kind intro. Firstly, Chris, it's very, very gracious. So yes, so I'm originally from the UK. I actually currently live in Dubai, however, in Toronto, being a fitness delinquent and traveling around a bit at the moment. So it's an interesting life. But one thing I would add into that, so what I do, we've transformed over 8,000 clients over the last few years, been featured in Forbes magazine, top 3 coaches in the world, men's health, all that jazz, which is not very interesting to actually help anyone behind the scenes. However, for anyone listening to this, what you refer to in me being in awesome shape now isn't how I used to be. And that's where the real value in this is, because a lot of people will look at me and think I'm genetically gifted, that I've always been like this. But the reality is that I was a really overweight as a child. I had really poor information and knowledge in regards to food. I was very introverted, which is now ironic because I spend my life taking photos and videos on social media all day. And that's one of the things I think people listening to this need to really like be aware of that. And you said it in terms of the way you've designed your brand and the name of the podcast. This is all your conscious choice. If you're currently in a situation where you're out of shape or you're overweight, not making a decision is making a decision in the fact that you don't know the information you need to know yet. And that's the big thing that I feel like is like a cross that I carry, that I came from being fat and overweight as a kid and being bullied and lacking confidence and not thinking girls would go out with me, whatever it would be. And now I feel like it's my wrong to right across the world, which is why I'm so big in terms of the educational side of things, in terms of correcting things. So I think a couple of things I would highlight in terms of that, which really led to me suddenly changing, was thinking about, there was one traumatic thing I remember as a child, which is probably like a skeleton in my closet. And I think everyone listening to this, you've probably got things like this that are similar to you. And that was that I remember overhearing my parents when I was on holiday talking about Charlie being fat and me being overweight and like, what are we going to do about this? And I remember that to this day, how like when something like lurks in your mind, because as a child, we look up to our parents and want to make them happy and proud of us. And I think that's one of those things that really like has always stuck there. And I've always been on a mission to try and make people never have to feel like that again. And I know that's something that people are driven by two things. So people are either driven by pleasure or pain. And I'm probably more driven by pain and running away from pain than trying to seek pleasure. And it's a very important thing for anyone listening to realize which one you are. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that if you're motivated by pain, but it's just understanding how to utilize that, if that makes sense, Chris.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. I'm right in alignment with you, very much like you, reading through your bio about page on your website. A lot of similarities. I grew up younger brother to two older brothers who I looked up to very much. They were terrific role models and great big brothers. But my father, who I was always trying to impress, right, or kind of prove myself to him, I went through kind of that chunky fat stage in that prepubescent time period, that 10 to 12, which is kind of a really challenging time period for a boy. The girls are getting taller than you, and the older kids start to have like hair, and you're like, man, when am I going to get hair? And I was just kind of a mess for about 3 years. And I remember walking in at night sometimes to say goodnight to my dad without like a shirt on or something, and he would just look at me kind of upset. Or I could at least sense dissatisfaction from him, and he would kind of just look at me troubled by like my chubbiness and my body, and I remember just taking that in, and that became a real driver for me as I got older into high school, wanting to lift weights and get more muscular and prove to him that I could be fit and muscular and strong and look good, and try to it almost turned me against my dad, because I started to have more of a kind of a hatred for him, trying to prove that I was worthy. And did you find that in yourself, almost like
100%. So
I mean, obviously it's a tough time. I'm just trying to be honest. I was uncomfortable in my own skin and a little bit angry and pissed off. And then I hung on to that all the way into my late teens and early 20s.
So mine went well on beyond that. So I would say that even up until maybe I was 20, I really suddenly clicked, and I managed to work out, not the magic formula, like there is no secret in this. Like there is certain principles, which we're going to talk about in terms of how I stay in shape, and I help thousands of other people do the same thing. But for me, I was go back a bit, I qualified as a personal trainer when I was 18. So I started to try and get into weight training, similar to you, probably because I was on this mission, like I don't want to be this person anymore. And I was very shy and timid about it. And I went about trying to do what I did. I remember hiding underneath my bed protein and creatine for my mum, because I didn't want her to see it, and weird things like that. Because people are like, steroids, like, what are you doing? And it's like, it's protein powder. And like, you can't take that. It's not safe. I'm like, it's protein powder. When I was like 15, 16 or something. But I know a lot of people are the same with that. But I think it's good to talk about those things sometimes. And I think what is really relevant is I actually qualified as a personal trainer when I was 18, because I was like, okay, what I need to do is I need to learn how to do this properly. get in shape, and then teach other people how to do it. Reality is, I went and did a training course, which was a load of, was a waste of time. And I became a trainer. I was relatively strong. I started training clientele. However, I didn't really understand the nuances in terms of how to like get people the full way in terms of results. Because a lot of people, and I was this guy from 80 to 25, went to the gym every day, 4 or 5 times a week. I did protein shakes. I ate clean food, and I never looked any different. And we, like you and me both know, we see the same people all the time who never change. And if you're listening to this right now, it's probably hitting home because you're probably in the same situation. I was that guy for 18 to 25, 26 until the penny suddenly dropped. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm spending, I don't know, 6-8 hours a week at the gym, spending money on all this stuff. I'm not actually seeing any progress. It's like, you either have to go seriously with this and put a little bit extra effort into pay some attention, or basically not bother. So I hired a coach to help me then get in shape for a photo shoot that then completely changed my life. Because in that process, I actually managed to get in really good shape for the first time. And I remember someone taking a photo of me, and I was literally myself in my pants, like in my underwear, and at the gym. Someone taking a photo, and I was like creasing. No, I wouldn't care at all. But and it's just relative. And for anyone listening who you find you put yourself in uncomfortable situations and things feel awkward and you get scared, like I'm naturally a really introvert person. And this is interesting, we're on a podcast, because initially I got really comfortable talking on camera or on Instagram, on YouTube, and that's fine. I started my own podcast. For anyone listening, it's called The Shredder Show, theshreddershow.com. And first time I did a podcast, I was like, this is like the weirdest thing. I'm talking to myself. It felt like the weirdest thing, and I found it really awkward, although I could talk to camera. But the big thing that I'm digressing about, I don't want anyone to reassure themselves on this, is that everything is going to feel awkward at the start. So when you start working out, it's going to feel awkward. You're going to feel out of place. You're going to feel nervous in the gym. Same thing in terms of nutrition. Same thing when you're going to ask a trainer or someone to help you. You'll always feel nervous. But it's you pushing through that barrier and taking the first step that's the big thing in you actually achieving the results and getting that extra 10, 20% of results. Would you agree, Chris?
Oh, without question. In life, most things that you've never done or you are confronted with or about to do, if you're not feeling nervous or anxiety a little bit or a little bit stressed or a little bit, the heart's racing, then why are we here, right? I mean, that's what's giving us our pulse, man. That's what's growing us, what's changing us. In my own son, I remember several weeks ago, he was about to pitch in a baseball game that was not just rec ball, but like the next level advanced baseball. And I'm pretty sure, and he was nervous. And he goes, he was like, Dad, I'm nervous, you know? And I'm like, buddy, I said, that's good. I said, you know what that means? I said, that means you care. I said, that means you care about doing well, about doing a good job. I said, that's you hold on to that. I said, that's good energy. I said, that's good stuff. And he went out there and he did awesome. I just fed into the fact that like what you're feeling is 100% good and normal and you should run with it. But it's people that run from that feeling, that don't allow themselves to feel that are missing out. Because when you can break through and have more of those moments, they still happen, right? We still get nervous. I still get nervous before a podcast or before speaking to people or making a video or doing anything, because it matters that I do a good job or that I show up or you know the result is going to impact someone else's life. I take that pretty seriously. So these are good things to go through, but we must if we want to get somewhere.
And I think this is really interesting, and I haven't really thought about this much, but it's an interesting topic to talk about very quickly, is the fact, because like talking about your son then, and don't know why I was thinking about this the other day, it reminds me when I used to play sports at school. I used to get super nervous before playing. I used to play rugby at a reasonably high standard, and I used to get really nervous. And similar situation to your son, and that advice is phenomenal. Because when you can like harness that stress and anxiety, it's like a superpower. But the thing is, I was never advised on anything like that in terms of like the psychology of managing yourself as a kid when you're playing sports and pressure and all that sort of stuff. And there's a good friend of mine who comes to mind who would have made it as a professional footballer. He was super talented, but his head just fell off. He didn't have the mindset for it. And I think this is one of the most important things for anyone listening to understand. And it actually comes back to me in terms of fitness perspective. I'm not genetically gifted. Like even with abs, my waist is still like 33 inches. I have big hips. I'm just like heavily built. Like some people have naturally small waist. I have to really lean to look like in good shape. And
same here.
And it's like, and I've also got like really long arms. So like there's something called the ape index in terms of length of like arm to height ratio. Like my arms are stupidly long, so I can't press anything and like whatever. It makes a really good deadlift though, if anyone likes deadlifting, because it's convenient. But
right, it does help with deadlifting.
But the point of that is the fact that you have the cards you're dealt, and it's your conscious choice in terms of how you maximize those. But this comes down to your psychology in terms of how you think about these things and how you think about them as a challenge. And the most important thing that is going to get you results, and I've talked about this a lot on my podcast and to clients recently, is actually turning up and being consistent and working hard. Like all the other stuff, me, Chris, whoever talks about in terms of like exercise execution, nutrition, some hacks, and we'll talk about later on in this podcast, is all a load of BS and doesn't really matter. The 95% is that you listening to this, you turn up day in, day out, and you do your best. That is what's actually going to get you results over everything, rather than like, I get people message being like, what brand of creatine should I use? Like what protein should I was like, if you're asking that, you're asking the wrong questions. Like,
there's no question about it. You're absolutely right, because we put so much emphasis on the little stuff, right? And it's really because it's the trending topic of conversation. But ultimately, the thing that was important for muscle building and looking good 50 to 100 years ago has just as much value and importance today, right? It's just what's selling right now, what's trending, what's the hot topic, you know? I wrote something here in front of me. I'm just going to read it real quick, and then we can get into this topic a little bit and then continue. We're all very busy people, everyone, right? We all feel in our own right that we're pretty busy, and we all do want to look better and feel better. I don't know anybody that wants to look worse or feel worse, right? I think everybody on some level of the spectrum wants to look better and feel better. But life comes at us 100 miles an hour every single day, and we all struggle with this limited amount of time to GSD, get stuff done, get bleep done. So, but what's the difference between people who do get stuff done and make time and the other people that just kind of chasing their tail in the struggles of life? Is it really just about discipline and how bad you want it, and just having more good habits than bad habits?
I was going to actually allude this is one of my favorite sayings and was the best things I've ever heard. So if anyone wants to write this down, this is sick. So I was going to say this when we were talking about earlier, and this is that a genius doesn't have great answers. He asks great questions. And the questions we ask ourselves, and we ask of ourselves in terms of what we're doing on a daily basis, are more important than the answers. So it's the same thing in terms of like the creatine, whey protein thing. That's the wrong question. And there's 1,000 different questions we can ask ourselves on a daily basis. But it's identifying like the big like needle movers in terms of our life, what's really going to help take us a step forward. That's the most important thing. And then cutting rid of and pushing aside the stuff that's not really going to make the difference. So like from a training aspect, I'm not sure what other people's opinion is, but for example, like foam rolling, in my opinion, before training, I think is a waste of time. And I get clients to me like, oh, I love foam rolling. It's really good. I'm like, okay, cool. If you like doing it, then that's fine. Like you can do it and it makes you feel better. That's fine. But I would never recommend it to anyone. So like that's my opinion, because, okay, maybe it makes like 0.5% difference, but there's a million other things I would do first that will have more of an impact than that. And that's an example in terms of like, okay, we have a limited and finite amount of resources in terms of time, and more importantly, in terms of attention. How can we deploy these efficiently as possible to achieve our end objective, whether that's to create an awesome physique, build muscle, burn body fat, whether that's to build a business, to make money, to spend time with your kids, to make sure your kids crush at baseball, like whatever it comes down to. And that comes down to the questions we ask ourselves first, and then trying to think about the answers and what we do every day.
Terrific. Absolutely. 100% agree. It's what questions are you asking yourself? It's great. And those of us that the older I get, the better I get at listening. I'm still quite a bit of a talker. I always have been. But it's the people that do a better job of listening that seem to kind of move ahead, because they're really aware and taking in and gleaning all the best stuff from other people out there and using what works and being able to separate the good from the bad and being good listeners.
On a fitness perspective, just one thing extra to kind of wanted to add into that. I think, so one thing I talk about for anyone in terms of getting in shape, and I think this is really important, is sometimes breaking things down a little bit to make it really simple. So I think one thing that happens is that I like to talk about the micro and the macro. So people try and zoom in too much in terms of the micro, like specifics of like what brand of creatine should I use, rather than zooming out, looking at the big picture. So one thing I like to do with myself is like thinking, okay, what do I need to do today that's going to help me achieve the things I want to achieve in life? So if it's looking in terms of like building an awesome physique and you want to burn like say you want to lose 20 pounds of body fat between Easter and summer, which is like a program we have running, what you would do is like, okay, I need to make sure I do the training program that I have set and I just execute that to the best of my abilities and turn up and work hard. Easy. I need to follow the nutrition I have best of my abilities within 80% consistently. I need to make sure that I sleep reasonably well, which I need to do to survive. I need to make sure I drink some water every day. Like those 4 things is really it to achieve the end result. Yeah, people tend to like try and zoom in too much in terms of like the small minutiae too much, and then stresses them out so much that they lose focus of the actual overall picture. And the same thing comes down to like a fat loss perspective, which is most people's issue. They think like, okay, I just need to be in a calorie deficit, and then they think about that, but they only do it Monday to Friday. The weekend comes around, they're going to Cheesecake Factory and they're eating 10,000 calories for 2 days. And then Monday comes around, their weight's gone up, and then they're starving themselves for 5 days and they're back in the same roller coaster. Because I was a bit in that when I was younger. I used to love going out for food, and I didn't really understand that. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't see progress. So if anyone's in that hamster wheel now, that's why you're not seeing results. And one of the big things that I think was a game changer for me was understanding that a saying like is the devil's in the dose. So like I managed to work out that, okay, nutritionally, I could pretty much program so that I could go out the weekend, I can have 1 meal, 3 courses, whatever I want, and I keep the rest of the nutrition on track, I will still make really good progress. And that's how you have some element of sustainability. And the saying I like is if like something's not sustainable, it's not going to be attainable long run. And if you're in the position you've never been in shape before in your life, all you ever have to do is one big diet, one big transformation, and that will change your life, providing you do it correctly, because then you should be able to, within 8 to 12 weeks, get in awesome shape again, is my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree wholeheartedly with that. And it's taking into consideration what the big drivers, the big movers are, and keeping those in check and not allowing yourself to get too far away from any one of those things. But what I will say too is somebody who's loved working out with weights and gaining muscle and being a strong guy, my whole life, the thing that made the biggest difference for me was simply just monitoring my intake and knowing exactly, tracking my macros, just tracking it, just knowing exactly what's going in my body to, with a deviation of probably like 100 or 200 calories, right? Because I'm putting every single thing that goes into my mouth, whether I'm drinking it or eating it, into my phone, and I was allotted a certain amount of calories from fats, proteins, and carbs every day. And I lost 25 pounds last year from May till October, just like 1 to 2 pounds a week, because all I was doing differently was just track. And, of course you start to want to eat a little cleaner too, because you're looking at what you're eating.
Funny how that works, right?
Funny how that works, rather than thinking about it. And so that was the first time in my entire life where I had really logged all of my food for such a long period of time. And it's the one time where I really felt like I'm not on a diet. I'm cleaning things up a little bit. I'm knowing where I'm at, come like dinner or that snack maybe after dinner, and like, oh, I have some extra calories to play with here. I can have like a bowl of oatmeal or something as like for dessert, or a piece of fruit and like something else or whatever. How cool. Or geez, dinner, I got to be a little careful because I went a little bit bigger with my breakfast and my lunch today with my fats. So I got to kind of tone down my fats, try to eat a little bit heavier proteins and moderate carbohydrates. But at least I had some idea. I think most people, probably 80 to 90% of the population or more, have absolutely zero clue. And if they took a wild guess, they'd probably be off by 1,000 calories.
And it's huge. And it's actually interesting you say this, because I put a post on Instagram today about they just made it law in the UK that they have to put on the food menu the amount of calories they have. I think it's if a restaurant has over 25 employees. And there's uproar in the media in the UK, like, this is going to make no difference. It's like, and it's going to cause like eating disorders. And I'm like, I basically have a post up saying like, this is the biggest load of BS ever, because like the fundamental issue that we have as society and why we have a obesity epidemic across the world, the developed world anyway, is the fact that there's a lack of information, there's a lack of understanding. If we have information and understanding of that, you actually know how many calories are in that meal you're eating, you can then make a better informed choice. If you understand, like you were talking about then in terms of energy balance, of like, okay, I know that I need to eat 2,500 calories today, for example, to maintain my body weight, and I've only eaten 1,500, so I can eat 1,000, and then I won't get fat. It's fairly simple when we work that out, and it's actually interesting. Like, and this is where people don't understand the advantages they have now, and even like me when I was younger, my fitness pal didn't exist. So it's like we didn't have those skills. Like we're showing our age, we didn't have those tools available to us like 20 years ago. Whereas now you can barcode scan things. You can type in like Starbucks egg white bites or whatever, and you just add it in. It's not like you're getting. I remember having to get like a calculators out and trying to write things out to work out like, okay, this is the calories I've eaten today. Whereas like, how long does it take you every day, Chris? 2 minutes?
Oh, to log everything?
Yeah, probably not even that.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, it's quick. And especially it catalogs everything that you're eating. It remembers what you're putting in. So as soon as you go to type something, like anything else on your phone, right, it autofills and knows what you're going at. Then you just update the amounts. And so, yeah, a couple of minutes, you could do your whole day of eating. I typically, and I got to get back to it, you do something for a period of time, and like life is cyclical, right? I kind of stopped doing it for a few months. I got to get back to it because I really know it's going to hold me accountable. And it's just a little accountability tool is all it is. And it's just anytime you track or log or write things down, you get better results. It's just the way life works. And so, yeah, I want to get back to doing that. But I would do it pretty well, like while I was eating the food or immediately after the meal, I would just quickly punch it in. But sometimes at the end of the day, I'd be like, oh, I gotta put my lunch and my dinner in. And you just kind of, what you ate. But yeah, I would measure out my wife was good at helping me like make stuff and portioning things out. So I knew, okay, 6 ounces of that or 8 ounces of this. It's really, really easy to do. It really is. People make such a big deal out of it. Like, oh, I don't have that kind of time to cook all day on Sunday and put everything. I'm like, it's not the whole day. It's a couple of hours, but it's setting you up. It's saving you time. Now you're saving your time for the whole week. Everything's like ready to go, and you can cook really good, tasty foods, salmon, chicken, steak. You can make and my wife makes these little egg things that are so delicious. They go in little muffin trays. Yeah. They're like little muffins. Yeah, and she puts put a little bit of pinch of mozzarella and some hot sauce and some diced spinach and stuff. And there's these great little egg thing. Man, I love eating those, and it's good for me, And
this is the key and the secret. And here's a couple of hacks for people. It's like, firstly, one thing I like to say, and it's not a derogatory way to think about it, but when clients first start with us, something I say to them sometimes is you want to think about eating like a dog. And I said for one reason. So you think about eating the same thing at measured amounts, same time every day, because then you have consistency. And then it's very easy from a coaching aspect for people like, okay, you're not making progress, let's change this and this. But also the second thing I was saying, it comes down to the same thing in terms of seeing results with your training, being efficient with your time, all these things. Structure equals freedom. The more structured you are in terms of your nutrition, the better the results you'll get. And also you don't have to think about it. Like, I roughly eat the same thing pretty much every day. I might swap things around a bit or in the evening or whatever, but generally I eat the same thing. And this is the key for anyone listening to this, is just have a diet, list things you really like to eat. So these are my favorite protein sources. carbs, fats. Obviously, don't put like Ben and Jerry's and stuff like that. Save that for like special occasions, and base your nutrition based upon that. And you just have to have the right amounts of these foods at the same time every day. And you can have a diet you absolutely love of the foods you actually really enjoy and make really good progress. And you eat the same things every day. You don't even have to think about it. And the same thing comes about in terms of you saying about like weighing stuff. It's like, it takes no longer for me to get like a plate and put it on a scale and pour some rice on it, than just put a plate and pour some rice on it. Or if you don't have time for it, a big thing I recommend to people is just use meal prep companies. If you want speed, pay for someone else to do it for you, remove that. And it's another thing you don't have to think about. The less decisions you can make, the better in your life. And one of the biggest things I see with like a lot of busy executives I work with, it's like decision fatigue. So like my big job is like, they just turn up at the gym, they do what they're told to do, and they just eat the food. So like they'll give their nutrition plan to like their assistant or their chef or whatever they have at home, or their maid or whatever. And then they'll do all the food for them. They don't have to think about it. They're like almost like a robot, because they've got loads of other things that are way more important, thinking about like, oh, I'm not sure if I'd rather have turkey than chicken. And like a really good example as well is that, and you know exactly what I mean about this, like people will say, oh, I want to eat something different every day. It's like, if you had a different nutrition plan every single day of the week, that would be almost, I think it's basically impossible, because by the time you go to the supermarket, the grocery store, you buy the food, you cook it, you can employ someone full time to go and do it for you if you wanted to, but it's not practical. And the most important thing is like this, like what's optimal versus what's practical. The best thing in life that's going to get results with anything is what's practical, and it comes back down to what we were talking about earlier. What you can do consistently for a long period of time is the key.
Yes, without question. It is that. It needs to be sustainable to be attainable, like you said. That's why I'm not a big fan of restrictive dieting, or, you know, certain types of diets that are out there that really I think are like just temporary fixes. You know, yeah, if you want to try and do something for 30 or 60 days just to kind of get the ball rolling, right? You know, and see some quick results or something. But ultimately, that slow approach, that long play is what's going to pay off big in 6 months to a year's time. And then it's much, much easier to kind of maintain and ride that wave. I love what you said too on your site, where you said, you know, what works for one or some doesn't work for most or all. Could you just talk about that a little bit, just because we are all a little bit different?
So this is something I absolutely love. People want to know the secret. Like, what's the secret formula for like, how many carbs should I be eating per pound of body weight? How much protein should I be eating? And how many calories do I need per kilo of body weight? I was like, I don't know. Like, the reality is, and anyone who tells you like, oh, so-and-so study says you need like 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. It's like, okay, was it that you in that study who has the same lifestyle of you, stresses you, body composition? No. So like, the reality in a lot of respects, these things aren't necessarily massively relevant, because we have to remember what we're dealing with here are human beings, not robots. So we're emotional creatures in that respect. So we have weird habits, we have things we like, we have things we don't like. It'd be much easier if everyone was like a robot, because it'd be easier to coach people. But this is one of the things to understand. So what like we would do and what other people do in terms of coaching is we will make like decisions based upon what to do with you in terms of nutrition, based upon experience. And there's certain like guidelines and principles I would look at. So for example, generally for most people, probably a gram per pound of body weight of protein is probably a good general rule of thumb. But if someone's 400 pounds and 200 pounds of that is fat, that's then a different conversation, which again is in terms of like the nuances of the individual. And the same thing again comes around in terms of, we look at different aspects in terms of like, okay, digestion. Digestion is one of the biggest things people don't look at in terms of fat loss. And our digestive system is so heavily interlinked to our immune system. And all of this underpins and links into fat loss. And what people don't look at is the fact that people often have like things like, they might be lactose tolerant, like gluten intolerances, which I have, and I didn't realize for a long period of time. Like, these things have a really negative impact in terms of inflammation, slowing fat loss, but people don't look at them or talk about them because they're not like sexy macros or like keto fat burning, all this sort of stuff. And that's where I like to look like around the edges of different things that people might not look at. So another big thing that I think is huge is sleep. So like, this is an aura ring for anyone who's watching the video. And it's a bit like Chris with tracking his macros in MyFitnessPal. If you have something to track your sleep and tell you how well recovered you are, guess what? You actually being aware of how much you're sleeping and how well you're sleeping, chances are you're going to sleep better, and you're going to be more aware of what you do before going to bed to make sure you sleep better, because it's actually something you look at occasionally. And those small things add up. And there's something called the compound effect. There you go. Something called the compound effect, where it's like, okay, in terms of, if we look at like each one of these things, sleep, digestion, stress management, for example, say each of them make like 1% to 2% difference. Okay, so they all add up to maybe say 6% hypothetically. That 6% every day over a period of time makes a very, very big difference. Very big difference. And that's where I think a lot of people sometimes are leaving a lot on the table, and they're almost like stepping over dollars to collect dimes in terms of their approach with what they're doing, because people are trying to go to like really extreme diets in terms of like, I don't know, things like ketogenic diets, which aren't really something I'd recommend, instead of restricting carbohydrates, when they need to look at maybe their stress levels, their blood pressure is through the roof, which again, like with the right approach, is relatively straightforward to fix within reason.
Right. Yeah, it's funny you beat me to some of this stuff because it's so true. Yeah, I was talking or taking some notes down, thinking about all the different ways we could go with our conversation today. And of course, everyone wants to put the emphasis on working out and exercise to get the results in the body that you want. Wow, look at this guy. Charlie, man, he's got it all figured out. His body is amazing. What's he do in his training regimens? I'm sure people would be like a little bit like, oh, wow, that's all you do? Like in a given week, it's like, well, yeah, you're probably pretty dialed in and know exactly, you have a really good understanding of your body and what your body gets the best, results from doing. But I wrote here that sleep and nutrition and recovery and stress management, all of those things added together, I think those far outweigh what you're doing in the gym. Larry Scott, one of the best bodybuilders of all time, he used to say, 80% of the results that he got, he said, were really nutrition driven, nutrition results, not necessarily. And I think a lot of people flip that. They think 80% of the work is happening at the gym and their exercise, and everything else is like the 20%. I kind of see it differently. For me last year, I did nothing different with my training. Wasn't spending hours upon hours a week. I was probably doing no more than 3 hours or 4 hours tops of training in a given week. But I was sleeping a lot more than that. I was de-stressing a lot more than that. I was doing yoga and breathing exercises a lot more than that. And, recovery and focusing on my food. Like if you add up all the other work I was putting in, aside from the working out, it far exceeded, right, how I got my results.
And this is the secret. And it's ironic because I actually find that the less I train, the better I look and the better the progress I get. But I like working out. So like me too, right. Ideally, I'd go and lift weights every day, but I know that that's a terrible idea. So for me, I train 2 days in a row. I take 1 day's rest and I repeat. But ideally, I've been meaning to do it for probably about 2 years and I haven't done it, is I want to scale my training back to 3 sessions a week that were like really full on. And I know I would get way more progress, but I just like working out. So that's not going to happen. But where I know this does work was when I came to Canada a month ago now. I was only supposed to be here for a week. That's another story. I went to go on like a ski trip around the mountains. So I was like, okay, I'm going to Vancouver for 2 days. I trained there for 2 days, and I probably didn't train for a week because I went to like Whistler skiing and do whatever. And I went to another like town called Kamloops. I trained twice there, and I didn't train for another 6 days. So I basically trained, I think, like 4 times in about 2 weeks. And I dropped a bucket load of body fat, and I put the photo on my Instagram, and I looked way better. And do you know what I did? I did 4 weight training workouts. I did no cardiovascular work. I didn't weigh or measure anything in terms of food. I was eating in a hotel all the time and eating out all the time. But I just had a core set of principles in terms of, okay, I know roughly I can eat probably 2,500 to 3,000 calories a day. and I will probably lose weight because I'm fairly active because I was skiing on my feet a bit. Okay, that's cool. The first thing I need to think about is just making sure I get enough protein in, and that I probably get roughly like 200 grams of carbs, 250. And I'd get some of that from fun stuff. I might have a muffin every day or a cookie or something fun like that. But I just had some vague restraints. But I knew the principles of what I needed to do in terms of like achieving the results of that. But I also had the other things dialed in terms of like what you mentioned. The big drivers that people don't think about are sleeping. Sleeping is so important. And one thing I should give some travel, like really good travel advice, if happy for me to go into that, because I think this is a huge topic and something I've got a lot of expertise in. I've traveled a huge amount before COVID happened. I think the year before that, I went on 52 flights in 1 year. So I'm very used to like winging it on the road in terms of how to make the best informed decisions. So a couple of things I'm going to explain basically what I did in terms of coming from Dubai to Vancouver. So when you're going to go on like a long trip or you're flying, rule number one I'd always suggest for people is to fast. So my flight was at I think like 9 a.m. or something. I wouldn't eat on the flight. I don't eat before the flight. I won't eat until I get to the destination I'm going. So there's a couple of reasons for this. One, it's a really good opportunity to give your digestion a reset, because like we're not necessarily designed to be eating food constantly all the time, which we are in the society we're in, particularly if we're looking to try and get jacked and build muscle and look great. Like we're used to just eating all the time. So it's really good from that perspective to give our digestion a bit of a break. Secondly, if we're going to be going onto the plane, my body tends to freak out from this as well. Like a lot of people get really bad digestive issues from flying, in particular because of eating during flying and having food digestion in their gut from that. You also have the issue that plain food tends to be horrendous and also really bad for you, difficult to make informed choices, unless you're going to take your own food, which is then also another added hassle that stresses people out. So something I recommend is just don't eat completely whilst flying until you get to your end destination. Just have water and coffee. And another great tip for this is if you're going on holiday, so say you're going to go from someone's in the US, Canada, you're going down to Mexico, I'm going there in a few weeks, and you're going to enjoy yourself for the week. If you don't eat for basically like the first day and you land in Cancun at like 6 p.m. in the evening, you touch down, you haven't eaten all day, you can go and have dinner, you probably eat 1,500 calories, have some quesadillas, whatever, awesome, have a great time. Guess what? You're probably already in a deficit of maybe 1,000, 1,500 calories on day one. That means you've got banked for the week already 1,500 calories in your locker, which is like a couple of desserts, a couple of cocktails, and that just puts you at maintenance. Then you're not even at like gaining body fat at that point. You do the same thing when you're going back to the US or Canada from Mexico. You're then saving another 1,500 to 2,000 calories probably, which is basically going to mean that that week vacation where you can have the extra dessert, the extra drink here or there, it's not going to make any difference in terms of you gaining body fat. So this is a really big win I recommend for people in terms of traveling. The second thing I would say is that when you're traveling, particularly long haul, I flew from Dubai to Toronto, that was like 15 hours, and then Toronto to Vancouver, that was another 5 hours, and it was a 12-hour time difference. So the big issue with that then is jet lag. And what we have to think about then is trying to get into the new time zone we're in. Now, when we look at how the body works in terms of circadian rhythm, our body only really knows what time of day it is from two things. One thing is sunlight outside, so natural light. The other thing is our eating patterns when we're eating. So if you don't eat the entire day until you get there, it's then very easy to start trying to get yourself banged straight into the eating pattern of being in Vancouver rather than when I'm in Dubai, and start to get my body into that sync of that new time zone. So for anyone who travels a lot with business, this is a really good way to try and get your body synced into the time zone you're going into, rather than like having a lot of issues. So, and a lot of people suffer from this really badly, and they have issues with sleep. So a really big tip is just when you get to try and get your eating patterns onto the time zone you're going to as quickly as possible, fast whilst flying, and it'll make a big difference.
Wow. Yeah, those are fantastic tips. And I tend to gravitate to the certainly the outgoing part of the trip. Usually like my flight, you're nervous about being on time and getting to the airport and all those things. So I'll generally just have like water and coffee and can do without whatever the airplane food is. And, you end up just eating so much crap anyway if you do end up eating. So it's better just to save. But I love the idea of banking. If you don't have something desirable in front of you to eat, then why eat some snack you don't even care about out of a little bag that was free?
It's a waste, right? And it's a waste. It's interesting because I people probably think I'm weirdo because it's not like I watch people on the plane, but like it's interesting to watch people's eating habits when you do what we do. So I remember two flights that stick in memory. One flying back from Dubai to London, I sat next to this woman and in business class, and she was like, "Oh, she was just having everything they would give her, and she was quite overweight, and she like, not that you can tell people are diabetic, but she looked like she had that sort of look a little bit." And she was drinking orange juice. She was drinking like everything they had. And then when the flight had in Canada, I think they gave you two options on WestJet. I think it was like cookies or pretzels. And like, do you want cookies or pretzels? I was like, no, I'm fine. Like, as in the middle of the day, I don't really understand why they would give that to people as choices. But I also think that's an example of the issues we have as a society, where the two options we give people to eat are cookies or pretzels. It's like, you're not 5 years older than a child that you need to have cookies at 2:00 in the afternoon. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, this isn't the world we should really be trying to help people in. And I think, and this is a really important, a good example I give from my own experience. Like, I talked about Cheesecake Factory earlier. I love cheesecake and I love desserts and I love the finer things in life. I love eating out. I love traveling. And this is how I sort of like managed to mangle together this training protocol and nutrition protocol I have, where you can do this and still get results. And that's in terms of like, I remember, and I had a bad relationship with food when I was younger, and thinking like how everyone does, like, we're told we have to clean our plate, don't waste any food. I remember I went to the Cheesecake Factory in Dubai and I pushed the boat out there and I tried something different. And I think I normally have the Oreo Extreme cheesecake, it's my favorite. And I had the red velvet cheesecake and I was like, this is awful. I had 2 spoons of it and I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to eat this because I don't want to eat 1,500 calories that I don't really want to eat anyway. And I was like, do you know what? That's really powerful, because that's me being like consciously controlling myself in terms of just not eating for the sake of it. And if you actually, like, when you break it down and you listen to this, if you were to eat 1,500 calories, that's like 2 hours probably on a cross trainer to burn that off. Like, and then I start to weigh that up. I'm like, okay, would I want to spend 2 hours on a cross trainer to eat that? Probably not. And that's the way I'd listen to it. But anyone listening to this who's like, you always say yes to the cookies or the pretzels on the WestJet flight, maybe say no next time and think, okay, do I want to spend 30 minutes running to burn that off? It's a good question.
No, it's great, right? Well, what's the alternative, or what? What I do with my wife when we go out, and we just went out to eat last weekend. We had an opportunity for a date night. She's in the midst of nursing school right now, and we wanted to sneak in a date night before she's kind of back in her full course load. And so we went out and shared a nice meal, and we shared our dessert. And we still didn't even get through one big piece of cheesecake. She loves cheesecake. I love cheesecake. It was like pecan encrusted cheesecake. It was delicious. It was a big piece. It was very rich. She had like 2 or 3 bites. I probably had 5 or 6, but like there was still half of it sitting there that like I was still pretty full from my steak. We each got steak and vegetables or whatever for dinner, but like you can go out and really enjoy yourself with a nice meal and still, eat reasonably well. You can tailor your foods and ask for them to prepare it a certain way. And then how about this? Get coffee and then share your dessert. And oftentimes you won't even get through the whole darn thing. But I mean, there's so many great little hacks and ways to still really enjoy food, because so many things in life are centered around food enjoyment, right? Like all entertainment, all activity, it's like, when's the food coming into the equation here? We're in a world of abundance for most of us, right? Where food is always plentiful, but it's making those smart choices, and there's lots of great ways to do it. Obviously, and you coach people to great success. Could you share some of your more inspiring testimonials? So some people that you've worked with over the years that come to mind when you think, wow, they were here and I helped bring them to here?
It's a really good example. There's a guy, Eric Waldo. So he was 300 pounds. He's now down to 200 pounds. I remember he sent me a photo of him wearing his old trousers. And I think his wife could get in them at the same time. There was such a difference. And I think it was like that 10 months he lost that much weight, lost about 100 pounds. But then his wife also joined the programs, lost a ton of body fat. But so he's a really good example. Like, I work with a wide array of different busy business people and people generally, from people competing to people looking to get in like photo shoot shape. And the big thing for me is thinking about, like I said earlier, is that all you have to think about is, okay, if I learn these skills once, and I work with someone like Charlie, for example, once, I can transform my life in 6 to 12 months for the rest of my life. Like, you do not have to suffer where you are now. And yes, you will have to work. I cannot do it for you, no matter how much I like working out, I would. Like, you have, in some respects, you have to choose your suffering in life. You either put in the work now and you reach out to someone for help, you do some training, you try some new things, you put yourself outside your comfort zone, or you accept you're going to suffer for the rest of your life in terms of not looking the way you want to look, feeling unhealthy, and knowing, more importantly, long term, that this is going to have a really negative impact in terms of your overall health for the long run. I remember I sat next to a guy on another flight, because I spent my life on airplanes, going to Dubai from London on Emirates. And I remember him saying to me, he had a weird job building like super yachts. And he was like, I hate working out. Tell me one thing that I need to know to motivate me to make it to the gym. And I remember him saying to me, like, he had a daughter. And I was like, okay, do you want to be at your daughter's wedding? And that's all I said, because it's like, you're 50 years old, you're overweight. How many 50-year-old men who are in high-pressure jobs who are overweight have heart attacks and die? I know quite a few, sadly. Like, it happens. But that, again, is your own conscious choice. And again, not making a decision is making a decision in terms of dealing with problems like this. So this is really important. And then if you go to another aspect, there's a client of mine, Danny Barrasso, who was a business executive who ran a big company in Germany, but actually lived in the UK and traveled a lot between the two of those. And I share his photo on my Instagram now and then. And he, people say he looks like one of the guys out of 300 because the guy just looked insane. He's actually doing another photo shoot tomorrow, funny enough. And he's like 42. Guys, like, I think he went from 102 kilos to 91 kilos. Guy's like jacked. But it's a prime example. This guy's a super busy business executive, but he is probably the best client I've ever had in terms of just being coachable. Just does what he's told to do, executes it, listens, turns up every day. Because he has that same mindset from his business that he applies to his fitness, and that's why he gets such good results. So, like, no matter who you are and what you do, there is a way to help everyone. And it comes down to what we were saying earlier. It's like, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach in terms of anything for anyone. Like, different exercises fit people differently. People have different mindsets, different aspirations. Like, some people just want to drop 50 pounds and want their wife to sleep with them again and feel comfortable with that or whatever. Like, we will have, then that's a reality, and that's what people want. And the big thing we all want, you want, I want, and everyone wants in life is happiness. And that's ultimately what we're trying to help people achieve in a non-cheesy way. Right.
No, you're right. It's to feel good in your own skin, and to feel, I don't know, it's content or proud or excited or energized. I mean, or all a combination of all these things. But when for me personally, movement of my body is what makes life more fun. The more I can move, when I'm sitting, how awful do you feel on a long car ride, right? Or a long flight? You usually feel like crap. You feel tired, you feel achy, you feel drowsy, you feel all these things. But when you're up and vertical and moving around, that's typically when we're at our best. We think better, right? When we're vertical, when we're walking. I mean, there's a lot of science that proves that. And why? Because, blood's flowing through everything, right? And our body's in a more optimal position and all of these different things. But I think movement is just such a big driver, regardless of what it is that you like to do, whatever the activity is, just make it part of your life. Go back, think about all that stuff that you did when you were a kid that made you happy, that motivated you, that made life fun when you were a kid. Are kids happy when they're just sitting? No. Kids are happiest when they're moving and running and tumbling and doing all that stuff. And when we get old, we start cutting that stuff out and saying, that's for kids. No, that's what we all should be doing forever. It's just that we grow old much faster when we start removing all that play and fun and movement from our lives. And so we just need to find ways like the gym or some other form of activity that gets us up and moving again, and that revitalizes us, I think, and just makes life more enjoyable and more experiential, right? Because when you're moving, now you're traveling, now you're walking and you're visiting and seeking things and exploring, that's what living's for.
And I think there's a beautiful thing about being in tune with your body and feeling how things feel. And I think Everyone should appreciate that they have this vehicle for life, and you're very fortunate to have that. And one of the big issues that we have in society, and it's something that I find that I suffer with sometimes, I have a lot of personal issues on this year, is in terms of stress management, anxiety, things like that. And the best way, a pattern interrupt, to change your mindset from being in a really bad mood or unhappy is exercise. If you have a really hard training session and you go and do some HIIT workout, or you do something like that, that will change your mood. I can guarantee it. I love walking. I think that's a great form of exercise for burning body fat. I actually recommend that over running for everyone. Everyone listening to this, unless you really like running. But for me personally, it's not intense enough. My mind will tend to travel to whatever problems I'm trying to think about. But for me, really intense training works really well. The only other thing I find similar to that is cold therapy, like ice bath. I did it yesterday, like Scandinavian spa. When you jump in like freezing cold ice water, you're not thinking about like problems in the world. You're saying like, I can't breathe because this is so cold. And that's how basic and like caveman this stuff is. And same with like, well, so you're going to gym weight training. If you're squatting, like, I don't know, 100 kilos on the bar or like 225 pounds, you're not worrying about, did I feed the cat or whatever. You're like, don't let this bar crush me. Like, I need to survive this. And that's a really awesome thing for everyone. Everyone should experience, I believe.
Yeah, without question. Right. It's simulating what our bodies were doing and hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. Right. But now we don't have to live that way, right? We don't have to do things in life the same way we once did as human beings. So we need to simulate those things to achieve the same result, which is, stimulus to the body, to the mind, right? And when those two things are in sync with each other, and we're not worried about the stressors and all the other noise of life, we're just in the moment. Like, yeah, you're right. I'm not thinking about anything else if I'm squatting 225 or benching or deadlifting or whatever it is. I'm lost in the moment of the exercise, of the workout, getting a good sweat, clearing my head, getting out frustrations. And I can't tell you one time where I worked out or did yoga or whatever. By the way, yoga is hard, especially when you're 46 years old like I am, and you've been training with weights, for the better part of your whole life. And I got a 30-year-old woman kick out in our gym outside this door right here, kicking our butt once a week to do yoga. And I'm holding positions, shaking, Anyway, I laugh because Mike, my best friend and founder of Critical Bench, we do this yoga session every week together with our instructor, and we never look forward to it, but we're so grateful after when we're done that we did it and we feel so good. I don't know if that sounds right when I say it, but it's not a workout I ever look forward to, but when it's done, when it's over with, I'm so grateful for it and I feel so much better. And it's that same way every single week. It's like that test that you're worried about it and have anxiety over, then you finally take it and you feel so relieved. That's yoga for me, but I think it's good because it gets me doing something that I don't really like, but I know it's good for me, and I like testing myself every single week. So I take what you want from that example.
I think what's really important what you said there, so that's the true definition of a superpower, and I say this to people all the time. It's like people search for motivation, and what they're looking for is the wrong thing, because what you don't want, like, motivation is an emotion that will come and go. What you want is to be disciplined and dedicated, because you will then learn a superpower that is making yourself do something which you have to do even if you don't want to do it. And as you said, afterwards, you will always feel so much better for it. And we all know that, for example, the alarm goes off, we don't want to get out of bed and go to the gym or whatever, work out early. When we hit the snooze button and we stay in bed, we don't go, we feel guilty and we feel bad about the actions we have. We have less self-respect for ourselves. And that's the one thing I want to say to everyone on the podcast who's listening to this right now. Think about having more self-respect for yourself for now and for the future, and how can you set yourself up for the longer term? Because that's the most important thing you can do when it comes to decision making, is thinking about the long-term ramifications of the decisions you're making, and thinking that most decisions you inherently make, that if something's pleasurable in the short term, it's probably going to be long for you in the bad for you in the long run. So things like eating the cheesecake, not getting out of bed, these things aren't going to help you in your health and fitness long term. However, you getting out of bed and working out is painful short term, good for you long term. You say no to the cheesecakes, painful long term, you don't get cheesecake, but it's good for you long term because it can help you health and getting in shape. And I think when you start to like compartmentalize and understand some of that, I think that can be very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a momentum builder too, because once you start doing it a few times and you just get better at it, right? Like anything else in life, the more you practice something, the better you get at it automatically. Those decisions just come more naturally. And then those good habits, like I uttered earlier in the conversation, the good habits start to take over some of the bad habits. We start replacing, and it starts small, and it's supposed to be small. If you really want it to be lasting, start small, do the baby steps, get some little victories, and then those little victories stacked on top of each other over time become pretty darn impressive, and it can be life-changing for sure. Charlie, where are some of the best places that our listeners can go to learn more about your story, learn more about what you're doing in the world, and maybe even reach out to you and start up a relationship with you?
So I'm on pretty much every social media platform. I'm pretty out there and outgoing. So if you mainly want to probably Instagram, if you head over and check out at Charlie Johnson Fitness. So feel free to drop me a message on there. I'm very present on LinkedIn, TikTok. So you search Charlie Johnson Fitness on there. We've got a YouTube channel. We've got like over 1,000 videos on there, tons of educational stuff that'll help you. So probably any question you have, I've probably got a video on there as well. So that's Charlie Johnson Fitness. And I've got my own podcast, which is the Shredded Show. So if you type in shreddedshow.com and Google, that'll come up, or on the podcast app. And if anyone wants a free copy of my abs guide, I've also got an abs guide and course, like a training course, which is just www.freeabsguide.com.
Amazing. Love it. Thank you so much for all of your wisdom and enthusiasm and passion and all the great work that you're doing for people. It's absolutely fantastic, and we applaud your efforts and everything. Thank you so much. Thank you, listeners, again, for choosing Strong by Design. Great to have you. Again, if you're new, thank you so much. Hope you go back and listen. We got a couple hundred episodes, well over 200 now. Lots of great stuff on the show that I know you'll enjoy. And for all those return listeners, yet another terrific conversation to inspire change in your life so that you can live a life that's truly strong by design. Hit that 5-star rating. Leave us a review on whatever platform you listen to the show. We greatly appreciate it. God bless you, and we'll be back next week, as always, on Wednesday when a new episode drops. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.